Welcome to another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I am the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that is teachthegeek.com. Today, my guest is Tania Will Jeppesen, and she's the founder of The Prepared Leader, offering consulting and speaking services on leadership development. Because she had an illustrious career in operations, I'm really interested to learn more about her motivation to start her company, her previous roles in corporate America, and the ways in which speaking has benefited her. So, welcome to Teach the Geek interviews, Tanya.
Thanks so much, Neil. I'm happy to be here.
I'm happy you're here as well. And so, from a bit of research I did on you, I saw that you studied industrial engineering. So, what was the motivation to get that degree?
That's such a great question. When I was in high school, quite frankly, I had no idea what I wanted to do for my career. And it was a bit stressful for me to even think that at 18, I'm supposed to be able to decide what I want to do for the rest of my life. And so what happened was I was in a club in my high school, and the teacher's husband was a professor of industrial engineering at Arizona State University. I had let her know that I enjoyed math and science, and so I was leaning towards thinking about a career, something to do with STEM. And she said, why don't you meet my husband? You can take a tour of the campus, and he'll tell you a little bit more about industrial engineering. So I had the opportunity to do that, really had a great time speaking with that professor. And I figured, industrial engineering sounds cool. And maybe it might not be what I do for the rest of my life, but it's probably a great start of a degree to get that could open doors for me in the future. And so that's how that all came to be.
Interesting. That's the first time I've heard someone say that it was someone else's husband that was the catalyst for becoming an engineer.
Yeah.
I used to lie about why I became one, Tanya. I was embarrassed by the reason because oftentimes when you hear people give their reason as to why they became an engineer, it sounded way more interesting. Maybe they played with Legos as a kid, or they like to take things apart and put them back together. I didn't do any of those things. I never touched the toaster and took it apart and put it back together.
Right.
My mother would not have been happy about that. And I don't even remember playing with Legos much. In fact, I became an engineer because my father said that I should become one. I have no clue
Oh,
why. Well, I have no clue why he thought that was a good idea. He wasn't an engineer himself, but I just did it and it worked out okay.
that's awesome. Hey, everybody has our own story, right? And it's amazing how all these little pieces of our lives make up who we are today. And I believe all happen for a reason. So it's pretty cool to see the different paths that take us down the journeys that we take.
Yeah, in fact, I had a previous guest and she became an engineer because they were giving scholarship money.
Great.
I was like, wow, that's all it took, huh? And then she got a PhD for the same reason.
Fantastic. I mean, if you can graduate from college with no debt, more power to you.
Yeah, for sure. Okay, so then you get this industrial engineering degree. What kind of work did you do when you left school?
Well, right after I graduated from ASU with my bachelor's degree, I actually started working at Target in one of their distribution centers in the Phoenix area. I started out leading warehouse teams, and so it was not in any way directly related to industrial engineering, although it was definitely stressed to look for ways to continuously improve processes, which is a huge part of industrial engineering. So that's really the first foray that I had into leadership, which kind of propelled me over the course of over 20 years to build the prepared leader, which is what I do today.
Okay, so did you end up getting a job in which industrial engineering was more, I guess, part of the job? And what kind of job was that?
Later on in my career, I worked for Coca-Cola and was in positions where I led projects. And so some of those projects did have to do with lean methodology, using Six Sigma principles, which were a core of what I learned in industrial engineering. So even though I wasn't an industrial engineer per se. I used a lot of those theories and concepts through those project management positions where we implemented new tools or technology or processes to help distribution teams be most efficient and effective in their roles.
How did you make the decisions as to what types of roles you actually went after and did?
That's such a great question. Throughout my entire career, I've really looked at it as a journey of exploration. So every role that I had, I thought about what did I really love doing in this role? What did I not love doing in this role? How could I do more of the things that really energized me? And that's what kind of catapulted me into each following role that I was in. And I think having that perspective has been really helpful for me because it's important for me to have fulfillment and meaning and excitement and energy in the work that I do. So I really haven't chased titles or salaries necessarily, but really looking for those great experiences that can help me grow into the professional that I want to be in doing the kind of work that I really enjoy and get fulfillment and meaning from. And then, looking to build on those experiences more and more to create sort of the dream job, which I have to say, I do feel like now I have my dream job. And I'm so, so, so grateful for that because I know not a lot of people have those opportunities. I know that I'm privileged to even be able to make those kinds of choices, and I don't take that privilege for granted.
For the people who are watching or listening to our conversation, Tanya, and maybe they're still in school, so they're getting ready to enter the workforce. What would you say they should do to prepare to be as prepared as possible to enter the workforce?
That's such a great question. And quite frankly, I wish that someone had given me this advice when I was in that spot. And I would say to college seniors, juniors, try to build your network now. So see who you can meet in different industries, in different positions that seem like they could be interesting to you, and see if you can set up meetings with those folks and just have conversations. I think most professionals are happy to help the next generation. So LinkedIn, I think, is a great platform to start getting your feet wet in and looking around at different companies and positions and really start building those relationships now. The relationships that you have throughout your career are 100% going to be the most impactful thing that you can do to be successful in your career in any industry, in any company that you're with. So I would say really look at building those relationships and start exploring what's out there.
I would say the most beneficial relationships are built on reciprocity. So
Yes.
if you're somebody who's just coming out of school, you may be thinking, I would like to reach out to these people on LinkedIn, but what do I have to offer them? They certainly have a lot to offer me, but I have no clue what to offer them. What would you say to those students?
I would say that everyone has something to offer. I actually have a great example of this. I'm in a mentoring program through a local association that I work with. And another mentee in the program reached out to me because she wants to learn more about leadership. But she didn't just say, "Hey, Tanya, can you teach me how to be a great leader and what it is that you do?" She said, "Hey, I would love to learn from you, but I also love doing graphic design and building out websites and building presentations. So if there's anything that you need help with any of the tools and resources you use in your practice, I'd be more than happy to take a look at those and help you with that." And I just thought that that was so awesome of her to do that, to exactly what you said, not just say, "Tanya, what can you give me?" But she really led with, "How can I help you? And then as you're able, I would love to learn from you about how to continue to grow and develop as a leader." So I would say don't minimize who you are and what you bring to the table and the skills that you have because you 100% are able to help anyone, regardless of where they're at in their stage of life or career. We all can learn from each other, regardless of age and career.
Wow, that was really smart of her to even think to do that. And this is a young person, I'm guessing?
Yeah, she's actually getting her master's right now.
Wow, that I would never even thought to do that when I was that young.
Same.
I was a selfish person. Like, gimme, gimme, gimme. But that's really smart of her to think to do something like that because I said, well, it stood out in your mind as opposed to
Absolutely.
all the other people that probably just wanted to pick your brain. People always want to
Sure.
pick brains, pick brains, pick brains. But it's like, okay, you pick my brain. What do I get to pick? You got anything for me to pick here? As I said, relationships should be reciprocal. And if
Hmm.
one person thinks that, well, I'm not really getting much out of it, well, they'll be way more less likely to want to engage in such a relationship. And then if you're that person that's looking for that mentorship or that help, you have to put some thought into, well, what could I give this person that would make them even want to talk to me? And
Absolutely.
so that was really smart on her part. Hopefully, if you're a young person or even an old person listening to this episode and you hear that, well, take that to heart, especially for the people who are losing jobs now. So many companies are laying off people, and you want to reach out to others to get help in your job search. Well, I mean, try to be helpful to those people too.
Absolutely. And the other benefit to her is now I get a sense of her work and what she's able to do so that as I work with clients, I have her in my back pocket to be able to say, hey, if you guys need help with XYZ, I know somebody that can help you with that.
Wow, yeah, so that's just so smart. Okay, so now you've worked in corporate for some time, but at some point you decide I'm going to strike out on my own. I'm going to start the prepared leader. So what was the motivation to do that?
Well, about 10 years ago is when I really started to think about consulting. I actually heard a speaker come into Coca-Cola, where I was working at the time, and deliver a session. And there was something about this session that sparked this little light inside me that made me think, I would love to do that. That seems like that would be a really great career. But quite frankly, I'm a naturally risk averse person. So the idea of not having a steady income and a paycheck every 2 weeks was scary for me. I'm also the main income earner in my household. My husband and I have two daughters, and it was really important for us that one parent stay home if we could make that work. And so my husband is a stay-at-home dad. The idea of starting my own business was pretty scary, but in late 2023, I really just felt a pull that I needed to at least try it. I did not want to come to the end of my career, the end of my life, thinking, what if I had given this a shot? What could have happened? And also, I'm sometimes can be the kind of person who can think of, well, what's the worst case scenario in this? And so I really tried to reframe my mindset to think instead of what's the worst that could happen, but think what's the best that could happen? What truly is the best that could happen if I pursue this goal? And I actually wrote those things down. I have a journal where I write down my big, 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 wild goals and dreams that honestly at this point feel kind of out of reach. But I feel like I have to put them down because I need to have this North Star of the things that I would love to be able to say are true about my life and my career as I pursue this journey. So that was really what made me decide that it's time to go for it and do my best work that I can to try to build this and see what happens from there. And I'm really, really grateful to say that the past year has been the most successful, meaningful, fulfilled, fun, scary, but also exciting year of my professional life. So I'm really, really glad that I made the leap to do it.
All right. So with the prepared leader, how do you help your clients?
There's really three main services that I offer. One is frontline leadership development. So, growing up in distribution centers and warehouses, I was really blessed when I started my career with Target to get a really solid foundation of leadership fundamentals as a leader. However, as I progressed in my career, I found that that experience was not common. And so now I'm really focused on trying to help frontline leaders feel confident in their roles and capable so that they can really thrive and bring out the best in their teams. Those are services that I offer primarily to larger companies and clients. From a small to medium sized business standpoint, I work with companies who are looking to build some of those operational foundations around crafting their mission and values, creating an operating organizational structure, help them determine what processes and systems they need to implement in order to make sure their business is successful. And then I also love to speak at conferences, conventions, workshops around leadership and developing your teams, preparing for leadership. Those are some of the main topics that I speak on.
Interesting. One thing that you mentioned was crafting mission and values. I'm really curious to find out what would the process be to even do something like that?
Yeah, so how that works is I work with the leadership team in small to medium sized businesses to really have a 1 to 2 day, what I call a strategic planning workshop. It's focused time for the leadership team of an organization to sit down and talk about why does our company even exist? What do we do? And why does it matter to us? So that's really how they craft their mission statement. And then their values are really those guardrails that they put in place for themselves and for their team to say, okay, if this is what we're saying is our mission, why our company exists, how do we then go out into the marketplace and represent ourselves in a way that's consistent with who we want to be? So that's how they craft their values. From there, they talk about the work that's done within the organization and create the best organizational structure to get that work done. Then we talk about documenting standardized processes, creating training, creating feedback mechanisms, meeting routines. So essentially all the structure that's really necessary for a company to operate successfully. So I really call that a company's operating system. And there's a lot of them out there. There's probably one of the most well-known ones for small to medium-sized businesses is EOS, the Entrepreneurial Operating System, but there's also great ones like Scaling Up and eMyth and a scalable operating system. So there's a lot of options out there, but I really just work with my clients to select one and use that to operate in the most effective way possible.
Interesting. I've always been curious about missions and values and the reasons why companies would want to have them. I suspect it's because if you bring in people and you tell them what those mission and values are, at least they have a baseline as to what to expect. And then not only that, they can look around and see if the people that they're working with are living by those mission and values, including the people who are at the top, who you would think, well, I mean, they're the ones who are responsible for creating these missions and values. And then they can have a decision to make as to whether what they were told, what the mission and values are, matches up with what they actually see. And then if not, then well, they can get on LinkedIn and get their profile spruced up, I guess.
Right. No, you absolutely nailed it. The mission and the values should be what attracts and retains individuals who are in alignment for what your company is all about. But like you said, the leadership team needs to be the team that is emulating that. And because if there isn't, then there's a lack of trust often that happens from employees who say, okay, this is what the company says they are and what they value, but what I'm seeing in real life does not align with that. And that's where people can really start to feel disengaged, morale can dip, productivity can dip. So that's why I always start in my work with clients is making sure that they have a strong mission that's not just pretty words on a wall, but really the heartbeat and the North Star of the organization. And the values, again, aren't just something that they post or have in emails, but really the ways that they hold themselves accountable to treat each other as well as customers and clients.
Yeah. And I would think that when you develop that mission and develop those values and people, well, once you do develop the mission and values, is it just like a case of the people who created them living them, so the people who work there see it, or is there something more that needs to be done to make sure that the people live the mission and values?
That's a great question, Neil. And how I encourage and work with my clients to really reinforce that is one, to make sure that there's mechanisms, meetings, things like that, in which you're often really reinforcing that mission and those values. And then two, when you're writing either job descriptions, or I actually help my clients create something called a job profile, which is basically like a very, very detailed job description that uses your company's specific verbiage and nomenclature around the processes and systems that you use to help people be successful in their roles. So I work with my clients to incorporate the values into those documents, because if we're telling our team this value is important to us, then we need to explain to them, what does that actually look like every day in your job? So for example, if a company has integrity as a value that is important to them, then in that specific role, how would integrity be lived out? So it could be responding to clients within 24 hours so that you're building trust in those relationships. It could be, having being involved in a mentoring relationship, because then you're showing that you care for others, and that's how you show integrity in that organization. However, the organization decides, but really giving their employees some idea of, what do these values look like lived out in real life in our organization, really helps people be able to be even further aligned with living out what that truly is.
Nice. You mentioned that one of your services also is speaking at conferences. When it comes to speaking, is that something you've always been good at? And if not, what'd you do to get better at it?
Well, I have always loved to perform. So when I was a kid, I loved being in musicals and theater and choir and things like that. But I never really did a lot of public speaking per se. So, from the aspect of being in front of folks, I've definitely always enjoyed that. But it's really been in the past year that I've done my best to hone my public speaking skills specifically. I went through a coaching program through an organization called the Speaker Lab that helps build a professional speaking business. And they really focus on a lot of the business aspects of speaking, but they definitely help you craft your speech. There's also individuals that I follow on LinkedIn who give a lot of advice and things around how to craft a keynote, how to incorporate stories into your talk to really resonate with individuals, words or phrases that you should or shouldn't say. So I'm constantly learning and trying to be better at my speaking so that I can really be in that top tier of speakers in any organization's events.
Do you ever get nervous before speaking? And if so, how do you deal with your nerves?
That's such a great question. Yes, I definitely get nervous. But one thing that I heard on a podcast recently, I actually heard Mel Robbins talk about how she can get nervous before certain things. And she used to see that as weakness, as, oh, wow, I'm nervous. So that must mean that I'm not ready and then I'm not going to do well. But she said that's not at all the case. Nerves show that you care and that you're ready and that you're energized. So I think of that now. I always think of that mindset when I get nervous, that this isn't a bad thing. This just means that I care so deeply about wanting to provide value to my audience. And so that's why I'm feeling this way. But then also, I heard some advice that your nerves can, be your adrenaline. So do something like some jumping jacks or jogging in place or something to kind of get that energy out right before you step on the stage, to kind of help calm that energy a bit and feel really ready to go as soon as you walk out on that platform.
Indeed. But I suspect that if you were to get up in front of people and those nerves are still getting at you and you're shaking uncontrollably and you're sweating and your voice is all shaky, you just tell the people, "Don't worry, I'm excited. I care."
Right, right.
Don't overlook the fact that I'm shaking.
Yeah, it's a mindset, but then also very practical things to help get those nerves and shakiness, like you said, out of the way as well, that are important.
Do you have a process for putting your presentations together? And if so, what is it?
I do. I try to think of no more than three key points to stress with the audience, because another piece of advice that I've read frequently and heard frequently is that oftentimes most talks try to cram too much into a short period of time. So if anything, don't add, try to take out. So I really try to focus on those three key points. I always try to start very strong. And for me, that means a story. And some other great advice I got is to start the story in a point that's maybe somewhere right in the middle of the action or a very key part of the story, and then kind of go back and reframe it so that you kind of grab that audience's attention right from the beginning. So that's something that I do try to do. And in all of my three key points, I try to have either a story or a quote that's very meaningful to me, but some kind of example to reinforce the point that I'm doing. So if you think about this, it laid out, I have a strong intro and I go straight into the points because, again, more things that I've learned is that it's actually better not to give the audience the agenda of what you're going to be talking about, but instead just kind of dive right in. So that's what I've started doing. So I go straight into my first point. I have a story or an example or a quote to reinforce that learning. I really try to make sure I put some kind of practical takeaway in there too, so that they can implement whatever that concept is. I follow that through with the second point, the third point, and usually at the conclusion, I try to either tie back to that initial story or example that I started with. But I really try to close strong and help leave people with something that will leave them feeling motivated, inspired to do something differently, to take some key takeaway from the talk to make a positive impact in their life or work going forward.
Nice. For the people who are listening or watching our conversation, Tanya, and they see the benefit of getting better as a speaker, what's the first thing they should work on?
Boy, that's a great question. I would say the first thing to do is practice. So find an organization where you have an opportunity to just practice talking in front of people more often. I visited a couple of Toastmasters meetings in my area that are great forums that are a safe space because everybody's trying to learn to be better. So you don't need to feel intimidated, where you can practice a talk. So I would say think of something meaningful that you would want to talk about. It could be a presentation at work. It could be maybe even something in your personal life. It could be a talk that you want to have with somebody important to you, whatever that is, but practice it. Go in with intentionality before you ever speak in front of an audience so that you present yourself in a way that's most authentically you. And that you're able to represent yourself in a way that you feel proud of as well.
Wonderful. This has been a great conversation, Tanya. Thank you so much for being a guest. How can people get in touch with you?
They can check out my website at thepreparedleader.com. They can send me an email at Tania, Tania, at thepreparedleader.com, or find me on LinkedIn at Tania Will Jeppesen. But thank you so much for the opportunity, Neil. Thanks for having this forum for us to chat together. It's really been a pleasure.
Wonderful. Well, everyone, that marks the end of another edition of Teach the Geek interviews. My name is Neil Thompson. I'm the founder of Teach the Geek. I work with technical professionals so they can present more effectively, especially in front of non-technical audiences. And you can learn more about that at teachthegeek.com. Again, that's teachthegeek.com. Until next time, take care and stay safe. Thanks, Tanya.
Thank you.